The following letters have been graciously translated by Jonas De Neef. Links to other eyewitness accounts are available in the description below. Paradis Pierre-Laurent, born 30th of May, 1776. Died 1st of August, 1855. A child of the Corps in 1788, he stayed in the army until 1837. He was promoted to a lieutenant of the 25th Line Infantry Regiment in 1811. The following are 3 letters written during Napoleon's 1812 Russian campaign. The first letter is addressed to Miss Genevieve Bonnegra, his wife. Written in Moscow on 20th September, 1812.
I am not yet dead, my incomparable friend, although I have suffered a great deal in this terrible campaign. I am writing to you from this beautiful capital so highly praised for its wealth and immense grandeur. It is in the midst of the ashes of this splendid city that I am going to describe my love for you, which is still burning with a new flame. You will know, my dear friend, that since the 22nd of January, when we left the garrison at Bremen, we have not stopped marching. We count having covered more than 800 leagues since then. You can imagine how difficult it must have been for me to cover such a distance on foot and in the heat, having been deprived of everything that could support me. In July, I also fell very ill and had to go to the hospital in Minsk, where I nearly died of putrid fever. Fortunately, I had money which served me very well, because in this unfortunate hospital, which had just been established, nothing was provided which could save me from the danger of death which was pressing upon me. What aggravated my illness was witnessing the departure of my regiment and not being able to make it. You feel as I do that having been promoted so quickly, I wanted to be present in all the battles in which my corps had to participate. I was fortunate enough, however, to rejoin before anything happened, and I took with me 132 soldiers who had also remained ill in this hospital. On arrival, I presented myself to my colonel with my detachment. At first, he was very pleased to see me, even though I was not very well, and congratulated me on the good order I had put into my march. He invited me to dine with him and said all sorts of complimentary things about me. I can therefore assure you, my adorable friend, that I have shared the glory of this fortunate campaign. I have been involved in all kinds of affairs with the company I have been commanding for the last 2 months. There is no need for me to elaborate on these dreadful affairs. It will suffice for you to know that the battles of Austerlitz, Jena, Pultusk, Eylau, Eckmühl, and Wagram have nothing in common with the last battle fought on the 7th of September. You will no doubt read about this remarkable affair in the newspapers, but I can assure you that it cannot be exaggerated, because the battlefield, which was about 3 leagues long, was covered with the dead and wounded. I can tell you that the Russians were lying on top of each other, dead on the battlefield, and that God, who watches over us all, worked the greatest miracle that day, because I myself counted 20 Russians dead against 1 Frenchman. I lost some good comrades in this affair. I myself thought you would never see me again, because in the chaos of the action, a Russian division crossed a wood where our troops were located. They poured terrible fire on us, and I was struck in the chest by a bullet. I fell backwards. My soldiers picked me up and thought I was dead, when all of a sudden, I recovered my strength, crying out, "Courage, my children! It is nothing!" I returned immediately to my post, where I was delighted to see the joy expressed on the faces of all my brave men when they saw me again. Fortunately, my adorable wife, I had taken the precaution in the morning of rolling up my levied and slinging it over my shoulder, a precaution we always take when going into battle. It must be said that this was not a useless measure, because despite the fact that it was folded several times, the projectile passed through everything. But it did not cause me much harm, as it had lost its strength by breaking the arm of one of my poor soldiers. On the 5th of the same month, i.e. 2 days before the general affair, I was much more exposed, and yet my clothes were not even struck. Here is why I say that I was more exposed. I was detached with a company to defend a redoubt that we had just seized from the enemy. I was ordered to move to the front of this redoubt in order to face 500 Russians, who were supported by 3 squadrons of their cuirassiers, and to prevent them from flanking it, which I did. I even had the satisfaction of seeing their numbers diminish very quickly. Each musket shot knocked one of them to the ground or wounded them. I should also tell you that we were only within pistol range, and that we owe our salvation to their excessive drunkenness. I would require a stack of paper to provide you with all the circumstances. I will therefore limit myself to assuring you that I am well and out of danger. Our great man promises us a swift return to our homeland. We all ardently desire it. I, for one, will say that I am content, for without you, I would not be. Now I would like to talk a little about my affairs, because it has been so long since we have dealt with each other that I cannot remember whether I owe you or you owe me. But I'm very much afraid that I will have to complain to you. I have not yet received a letter from you since I told you that I had been appointed second lieutenant. Since then, I have told you that I am a lieutenant and in charge of the clothing and armament of the corps. You have not replied to me either. Here are 2 debts already. I intend to be satisfied, you hear me well? So please try to please me, despite the long distance that separates us. I do not intend to lose what you owe me. 2 days ago, as I was passing in front of the bivouac where the army post office was located, I saw a director who is a great friend of mine, and I gave him a small box to send to you, containing a heart-shaped medallion, some gold-plated seraglio pastilles, a hairpin, and some pearls, which you can use as you see fit. To make sure that these items would reach you safely, I enclosed some Chinese tea that I had given him as a present. He took it upon himself to send everything for you to the postmaster at Uyule, as I myself did not have the time to write to you while the regiment was passing through, since we have not had a moment's rest since our arrival in front of Moscow. You will be aware that this superb city has been reduced to ashes, and that it was the Emperor of Russia who forced the inhabitants to evacuate it, and who had set it on fire at all points by 10,000 Russians and all the galley slaves. There are very few quarters left that escaped the fires, and in which we are currently quartered in barracks, and, I believe, will spend the winter. We tried to salvage as much as we could from the flames, both in terms of food to feed the army and items for its use. Imagine the loss of the city by what I am going to tell you. There are 1,600 bell towers, each more magnificent than the last, and it is said to be 14 leagues in circumference. Every day we find a lot of superb furs in the cellars that have not been burnt down. I bought a very beautiful fox fur coat covered with a lovely purple satin. I wish I could send it to you, but I do not know how. It is too big, as you can imagine. When all is quiet in the rear, I will consult the postmaster at headquarters, my friend Lelumont. He is the only one I can think of who can provide me with this service. I think you will receive the little box I told you about without any hindrance, as it is not very large. I will be all the happier for it as they are genuine seraglio pastilles. The ones in the medallion were valued at 5 louis d'or. The entire lot, together with the other trinkets I have with me, cost me only 12 francs. Paid to a soldier who had just found them in a cellar. I implore you to send me your tidings. You know how much they please me when I receive them. If we had passed the Emperor's review recently, as we expected, I think I would have received the cross. We still have to wait, but I hope it will not elude me. I have received several letters from Hector. He is very annoyed that he cannot see me. I say the same to him in my replies. I embrace you from the bottom of my heart, your faithful husband for life, Paradis.
On the 25th of September, Lieutenant Paradis wrote another letter addressed to his father, outlining similar circumstances.
Moscow, the 25th of September, 1812. My dear father, it is from this superb capital, today almost reduced to ashes, that I hasten to inform you of my tidings, knowing well that after having been so much exposed to danger in this terrible campaign, it will be pleasant for you to learn that I had been evened by a spent bullet, which happened to hit me in the sensitive area. For if I had not had my levite buckled and slung around me, although the rascal had lost much of its strength, the ball would have pierced my heart, as it was able to go through the fabric folded 10 times over. I had been present at many of the battles we have fought since the war began, but I swear that none came close to the one we experienced on the 7th of this month with the Russians. I can assure you that the battlefield was covered with the dead. I myself counted 20 Russians for every Frenchman. Their loss is inconceivable. Imagine a general affair which lasted from 5 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock in the evening. We even skirmished for part of the night. We counted that their men stood 150,000 men strong, who on that day gave their all. Our numbers were about the same, but the Imperial Guard was not sent forward. I cannot better compare the continuous fire to you during all this time than to the most rumbling thunder. Grape shot, cannonballs, and shells whistled past our ears like hail. Thus, when everything turned quiet, I swear to you, in spite of the bad weather, I did not have to be rocked to sleep, for as soon as I threw myself on the ground, I closed my eyes and did not open them until my soldiers woke me up the next morning to eat the soup, of which I was in need, just like them. Finally, I would like to recount all the events of this famous campaign, but it would take me too much time and more than one sheet of paper. It will suffice for you to know that we were always victorious, and that my regiment formed the vanguard of the army for 15 days, and that every day I fought with the company which I have the honor of commanding since the first affair as a lieutenant. For it is good to inform you that by imperial decree of the 25th of November 1811, I have been appointed second lieutenant by decree of last 10th of June by His Majesty himself, in his presence at the courtyard of his palace when he was passing through to Danzig, while reviewing our regiment, and appointed me lieutenant. Also, my colonel, 8 days later, appointed me lieutenant in charge of the clothing and armament of the regiment. I embrace you, your good son, Paradis.
Lieutenant Paradis wrote to his son Hector the following day detailing the burning of Moscow, dated 26th of September, 1812.
My dear son, thanks to the Supreme Being, I am well, and I have made it through this terrible campaign without being wounded. If I could, my good friend, put before your eyes the appalling picture that presented itself to us as we approached this superb capital, you would shudder with horror. Imagine a city 14 leagues in circumference, burning on all sides. 10,000 Russians, paid by their emperor, have not stopped setting fire to it for 8 days. Very few districts have escaped the flames. There are 1,600 steeples in this city, each one wealthier than the last. Ah, my dear Hector, I swear to you that it is a great nightmare to behold the wreckage of such a magnificent city, when I tell you that in some parts of the city you can travel up to 2 leagues without encountering 10 houses that have not been burnt down. However, it is in the midst of this disorder that we are obliged to spend the winter, or so it seems, as we have orders to provision ourselves for the duration. We are quartered in the districts that did not burn. You can imagine how comfortable we must feel after 10 days of looting. I have received all your letters, and I have not been able to answer them because we have not had any rest. My dear son, I still am your good father who recommends wisdom, obedience, and diligence in your studies. Paradis. P.S. Tell me something about your grandmother and grandfather, because I have not heard from them for a long time. Also, why do you not write to Miss Genevieve Vonnegra in Ouillet in the Var department? Here is her address again. If you do not do so, we will be very upset.
These accounts were translated into English by Jonas De Neef. If you liked this content, make sure to hit the subscribe button and to help support the channel so we can bring you more content like this. Links are provided in the description below for more eyewitness accounts of the Napoleonic Wars, many translated into English for the very first time. Thank you for watching.